We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Beizam and Beizam Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 22b. This daf is sponsored by David Grossman. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you'd like to sponsor an Avodah Daf, see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Zama, the Mishnah said that we're not allowed to place our animals by the inns of the Ovdei Kochavim because of the fact that the Ovdei Kochavim, the idol worshippers, are suspect when it comes to sodomy, when it comes to bestiality with the animals. And so the Gemara now asks, Mini, we have the following contradiction from a Brisa. This is from the Tosefta. It says, Lochin mehen behemel a carbon. We are allowed to buy from the Ovdei Kochavim an animal for a carbon. Ve'ein chosh, and there's no concern, lo mishum roveya, not because of roveya, that means the animal sodomized the person, ve'lo mishum nirba, and not nirba, that a person sodomized the animal, ve'lo mishum muksa, we're not concerned about muksa, that it was designated for avodas kochavim, as Rashi says, muksa sheik seyu v'yichdeu l'tikroves avodas kochavim, that he set it aside and designated it for offerings for Avodah Zara. Ve'lo mishum nevan, and we're also not concerned that he actually made it into an Avodah Zara and bowed to it. And so you see over here that it's saying that there is no concern for roveya nirva. The Gemara says, Bishlama muksa v'nevan. Now I understand that we're not concerned for muksa never. We're not concerned that it was designated for takrovas avodas kochavim. We're not concerned that it was actually worshipped, because im isa da'aksi, because if it was true that he had set it aside for avodah zara, v'im isa da'palchi, and if it was true that he actually bowed to this animal, lo have a mazvin le, so he wouldn't have sold that animal to the Jew. So that part of the brisa makes sense. El roveya v'nirva, but when it comes to roveya nirva, that concern, why are we not concerned? Lachish, we should have that concern, and again, that seems to contradict our Mishnah where we do have that concern. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rav Tachlifa, Amar Rav Shila bar Avina, Mishmei de Rav. Rav Tachlifa says that Rav Shila bar Avina says, in the name of Rav, Ovid Kochavim chasal behemto, and Ovid Kochavim, an idol worshiper, cares about his animal. In this case, he's selling you his animal. Shalot teyakir, he doesn't want the animal to become sterile, and the animal can become sterile if the animal is a nirva. The Gemara says, Hateinach nekevos. Well, that makes sense. Let's say the animal is a female, so then if a male is going to sodomize the female, then you actually will have that problem that it will become sterile, and so we don't have that concern. But Zachar Michael, what are you going to say when it comes to male animals? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Kahana says, Hoelu machishin bevasar, but still, it weakens the animal, and so therefore, since there's a weakening of the animal, that's the reason, again, he's not going to do it to his own animal. That's why it's only a concern that we not put our animals in the inns of the Ovdei Kochavim. And Rashi explains, Zachar Ma'ikal, what are you going to say by male animals? Nechosh dilma rava Ovid Kochavim. Again, we should be concerned that maybe the Ovid Kochavim, the idolater, sodomized the male animal. Tahachal leka ikar, here you don't have that concern of sterilizing the animal. V'zachar nami mifsal benirba. And Rashi notes that a male animal also would become disqualified. Let's say it's sodomized by a person that's a male. Tahakra de nirba demin habehema ba'ola ksib, because the whole pasuk of nirba is written by an animal by the carbon ola. V'ola zachar, and an ola is a male animal. And we say to exclude the roveya and the nirba, so nirba applies to male animals as well. But the Gemara continues and asks, but what about that which we learned in the following brayso? So, Lochin behema me roa shalahen, you can buy animals from their shepherds, meaning the shepherds of the Ovdei Kochavim. And so in this case, the roa doesn't own the animal. So therefore, lechosh dilma ravala, we should have a concern. Again, maybe he sodomized the animal. Why don't we have the concern in that situation? The roa, again, is not the owner, so you can't give the answer that we gave above of Oved Kochavim chasal behemto. And the Gemara says, no, the roa shalahen, their shepherds, misyare mishum their shepherd is going to be afraid, because he's going to be afraid that he's going to lose his wages if the owner finds out that this is what the roa did. So he's not going to pay the roa because the roa is damaging his animal, and so therefore there's no concern by the roa as well. But the Gemara continues and asks, but what about that which we learned in the following brisa? Ein mosrin behemul l'roa shalahen. It says we can't give over an animal to their shepherds, meaning to say to a shepherd that's an Oved Kochavim, because there is a concern that the roa is going to engage with the animal in activities like bestiality. So why are we concerned? Didn't we just say that a roa is afraid he's going to lose his wages? Lema roa shalahen misyare mishum hefset schar. We should say that their roa, their shepherds, are afraid because of hefset schar, he's going to lose out on his wages. And the Gemara answers, Inhu diyodi bahadadi, they know each other, meaning to say, they know of each other's activities. The Ovdei Kochavim realize that they all engage in these kinds of activities. So mir to see, so therefore they are afraid. Therefore their shepherds are afraid that the owner, who's an Oved Kochavim, is going to suspect them and is going to catch them doing this activity. But anon de lo yadinan behu, but we who don't know their ways, and therefore we're not as familiar, so lo mirtasi, so therefore the roa is actually not as afraid, and that's why we can't give over the animal to roa shalahen, to the roa that's an ovid kochavim, because again there is this concern of bestiality. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Hainu diamri inchi, that's what people say, michtava glola baza ragla bechavre yoda. Rashi explains the expression, michtava glola baza ragla bechavre yoda, michtav shekorn garfia v'shel barzelhu. This is referring to like a stylus. It was made out of metal, which they would use to carve onto marble. Korea v'roshem es hagalol shayish. It was able to carve into marble. They would use this instrument to carve into the marble. And the point is as follows. Kilomar, what it means to say is as follows. Hashayishu kasha, the marble which is hard, yori min hamichtav, that's afraid of the stylus. Lafishu makirbo, because he recognizes it. They're similar. V'chein rachel uvliyal, and so too somebody who's a rachel, somebody who goes around, he gossips, he commits averus, makir bechaveros, so he recognizes that in his friend, v'yori mipanav, and therefore he's afraid of him, and that's the same idea. Over here, these the ovdei kochavim are all engaged in the same activities, and so therefore they fear one another, and that's not true when it comes to receiving the animal from a Jew. But the Gemara continues and asks, if so, zecharim and nekevos, let's say male animals, you want to purchase them from women, so lo nizbon, we shouldn't be able to purchase those, because there we should be concerned that maybe the woman who's the owner, she's going to have the animal sodomize her. The point over here is that the only reason we were not concerned was because we said that there's a damage that happens to the animal. Now, the damage that happens to the animal is only when the person, the owner, is a male, and so he engages with bestiality with the animal, so again, that can either cause the animal to be sterile or cause some kind of damage. But let's say it's a male animal with a woman, so then it actually would not be an issue in terms of damage, so we shouldn't be able to purchase. And the Gemara says to that, no, kavan demigri ba miratas, over there also the woman stays away from that, because what's going to happen then is that the animal is going to get attached to her, it's going to follow her around everywhere, and therefore it's going to be kind of obvious, and therefore she's afraid to do that. But the Gemara continues and asks, Elahad Tani Rav Yosef, but what about that which Rav Yosef taught? Armelosa lo sarbi kalbet says that a widow, she shouldn't raise a dog. Velo sishri bar beirav bushpiza, also she shouldn't host a bar beirav, which is a Torah scholar. Rashi explains, Lo sarbi kalba shematisave v'tarbienu. The concern over there is that with a dog, again, there's going to be a situation of bestiality. And Lo tishri bar beirav bushpiza, she also shouldn't host a Torah scholar, da'agav ditzniya, since he's a modest person. Lo mirtas shayotzi kolim tiva lo, so she's not afraid that the rumor is going to spread if she has relations with him, and so that's why she shouldn't do these things. And so the Gemara continues and asks, Bishlama bar beirav, I understand what the problem is specifically by a Torah scholar, tzniya, so it's a situation where it's going to be done in a modest fashion, and so therefore she's not concerned that the rumors will spread, and that's why she should not host him. Ela kalba, when it comes to a dog, kevon demigra ba mirtasa, again, if we, like we just said above, the animals are going to be drawn after the woman, and so therefore she'll be afraid to act in any way with the dog. So why is it a concern that she shouldn't raise a dog? And the Gemara says, no, by a dog specifically, it's not a problem. Kevon dechishad yelei umsa umasrecha basra, since let's say she would throw some meat to the dog would also constantly follow her around. So meimar amri inshi, people will say, hi de misrach basra, the reason why the dog is following her, mishum umsa de kamasrach. The reason is because again, it's just because she gave some meat to the dog, and therefore in that situation, she's not going to be concerned if the dog follows her. That's why it is a problem that she should raise the dog. And the Gemara continues, Nekevos etzel nekevos my time alomi achtinan. In terms of our Mishnah, again, we said that you're not allowed to leave your animal by the inn of the Ovdei Kochavim. Well, what if it would be a female animal with a female owner? Why is that a problem? We should be able to leave that animal over there by the inn. There's no issue of bestiality in that situation. And the Gemara says, Amar Marukva Bar Chama says, V'mnei she'ovdei kochavim mitzuyin eitzel neshei chavrein, because the Ovdei Kochavim, the idol worshippers, they frequent the wives of their friends. Upa'amim she'eno motza. Now sometimes this man that's going to come over to try to find her is not going to find her. Umotzes avema, instead he'll find the animal. Verovan, he's going to commit an act of sodomy. It's going to be bestiality in that fashion. That's why that is a problem. V'ibay same, and if you want, we could say as follows: Afilo motza, even if he does find her, nami rova, he's still going to sodomize the animal. Diamar mar, because the master said, Chaviva alein behemtan shal Yisrael yoser mina shal say, and when it comes to the idolaters, it's more beloved to them, the animals of the Jew, than their own wives. Now, why is that the case? The Yomer Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says, B'shasha bar Nachash al Chava, at the time that the Nachash had relations with Chava, Hitel ba Zuhama, so he put within her a certain kind of impurity, and so therefore they actually prefer these animals over their wives. The Gemara says, Yihachi, if so, Yisrael Nami, by Jewish people also, they should have the same kind of impurity, if that's what happened with Chava. And the Gemara says to that, Yisrael Sha'amdu al Har Sinai, Klal Yisrael that stood by Har Sinai, Paska Zu HaMason, so that impurity ceased. But Ovdei Kochavim Shalo Amdu al Har Sinai, the Ovdei Kochavim, they didn't stand by Har Sinai, they didn't receive the Torah, Lo Paska Zu HaMason, so their impurity did not cease. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question, Ophos Mai, what about when it comes to birds? Can you leave those by the inns of the Ovdei Kochavim? And the Gemara says, Tashma, come here, the following proof. The Amar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel Mishum Rabbi Chanina, because Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Ani Ra'isi Oved Kochavim Shalokach Evos Min Ashuk. I saw an Oved Kochavim, an idolater. He bought a goose from the marketplace, Rava, and then he sodomized it, Chankot Salav Yachla, and then he strangled it and roasted it and ate it. V'yamar Rabbi Yirmiyah Difti, and Rabbi Yirmiyah from Difti said, Ani Ra'isi I saw a certain Arab, he bought a thigh from the marketplace. He carved it out in order that he could sodomize it. And Rava, and then he did that, he committed that act. And Salav Yachla, he roasted it and he ate it. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph.